In the heart of the Amazon, the town of Kauai was a place where faith and trust were the very fabric of life. But on August 18, 2024, that fabric unraveled in the most shocking way. Father Paulo Araujo da Silva, a man once revered as the moral backbone of the community, was led away in handcuffs, accused of crimes so dark they defy belief. How could a trusted shepherd of souls hide such sinister secrets? As the truth emerges, the town is left grappling with a betrayal so profound it threatens to tear them apart. This is the harrowing tale of faith shattered, lives destroyed, and a community forever changed. Father Paulo Araujo da Silva had been a well-loved figure in the small town of Kauai for over 10 years. To the people there, he wasn't just a priest, he was a trusted friend and leader. Father Paulo was always there when someone needed him, whether it was for a comforting talk, guidance through tough times, or leading community events that brought everyone together. People in the town spoke of him with admiration, often saying how lucky they were to have such a devoted and caring priest. He wasn't just active within the church, but also deeply involved in the daily lives of the townspeople. He organized charity events, helped fix homes, and even settled disagreements between neighbors. His dedication to the town made many people see him as a blessing, someone who made their lives better just by being there. Because of this, almost no one ever questioned his actions or decisions. However, under this kind and holy image, there were hints of something troubling. At first, the signs were small, like hugs that felt a bit too long or compliments that seemed a little too personal, especially when directed at younger members of the parish. These moments made some people feel uneasy, but because Father Paulo was so respected, they dismissed their worries. They told themselves they were imagining things or that they were wrong to doubt someone as good as Father Paulo. As time went on, these small signs became harder to ignore. Some of the townspeople began to talk quietly among themselves, wondering if something was off. But in a town where the church played such a central role, and where Father Paulo was seen as a moral guide, it was difficult for anyone to speak up. Most people were too afraid to express their concerns, fearing they would be judged for questioning someone so important to the community. For those who had felt uncomfortable around Father Paulo, it was an especially confusing time. They struggled with their feelings, unsure whether to trust their instincts or continue believing in the man who had done so much good for the town. They didn't want to believe that someone they respected so much could be anything other than the kind and caring priest they had known for so long. As the unease grew, people started to wonder, who was Father Paulo really? Was he the devoted priest they had always trusted? Or was there something darker hiding behind his gentle smile? These questions lingered in the minds of the townspeople, leaving them unsure of what to believe. As time passed, some parishioners began to observe troubling changes in Father Paulo's behavior. It started with subtle shifts that quickly grew more concerning. Parents began to notice their children acting differently. Kids who had previously been lively and enthusiastic about church events now seemed withdrawn and irritable. They were moody, avoided social activities, and often expressed a strong reluctance to attend church functions. These were significant changes for children who had once enjoyed being part of the community. When parents tried to get their children to talk about what was bothering them, they found the kids unwilling or unable to share their feelings. Many children were too frightened to speak up. They might have been confused by what was happening to them or scared of getting into trouble, so they chose to keep quiet instead of risking punishment or further discomfort. This silence made it even harder for parents to understand what was going on and to connect the changes in their children's behavior to Father Paulo. Meanwhile, rumors began to spread around town. People started talking about odd behavior and uncomfortable interactions they had witnessed involving Father Paulo. Some individuals mentioned inappropriate comments or actions that didn't seem right. Despite these rumors, most people quickly dismissed them. The idea that someone as revered as Father Paulo, who had always been a pillar of the community, could be involved in something so terrible was simply too difficult for many to believe. The power dynamics in the town were significant. Father Paulo's role as a priest gave him a position of immense respect and authority. He was seen as a moral guide and a source of support, making it hard for anyone to question his actions or speak out against him. This strong sense of respect and trust created a barrier that prevented the truth from coming to light. For those who felt victimized by Father Paulo, the silence was unbearable. They felt isolated, believing that they were suffering alone. The fear of not being believed was compounded by the priest's high standing in the community. Victims worried that their concerns would be dismissed or that they would face backlash for speaking out against someone so highly regarded. This fear kept many from coming forward, allowing the troubling behavior to continue unchecked. The respect and trust people had in Father Paulo created a significant obstacle. It was nearly impossible for the truth to emerge because the community's faith in their priest was so strong. The power imbalance made it difficult for victims to speak out and for others to take their concerns seriously, leaving them to bear their burden in silence. In early 2024, serious steps were finally taken to uncover the truth about Father Paulo. The process began with anonymous tips sent to local authorities. These tips suggested that Father Paulo was involved in serious misconduct, far beyond what anyone had initially imagined. The tips were detailed and included specific accusations, which prompted the police to start looking into the matter more closely. Knowing the sensitive nature of the case, the authorities were extremely cautious. They understood that any misstep could alert Father Paulo and potentially ruin the investigation. To avoid tipping him off, they decided to start their investigation quietly and methodically. The initial focus was on the church's financial records. Investigators reviewed the church's accounts and transactions. They found several discrepancies. Large sums of money that were supposed to be allocated for church projects were unaccounted for. These funds had been diverted to private accounts that didn't seem to be related to any legitimate church expenses. This discovery suggested potential embezzlement or fraud and pointed to possible misuse of Father Paulo's position. As investigators dug deeper into the financial records, they found more signs of misconduct. They traced the diverted money and found a pattern of manipulation. It became clear that Father Paulo was using his position to exploit church resources for his own benefit. This financial misconduct indicated a broader pattern of abuse of power. However, the investigation took a more disturbing turn when authorities uncovered hidden recordings. These recordings, which numbered over 260, were discovered in a secure location that Father Paulo had kept hidden. The videos documented instances of abuse committed by Father Paulo against his parishioners. The recordings were chilling, revealing the extent of his exploitation and abuse of trust. Each video showed disturbing and illegal behavior, providing concrete evidence of the priest's misconduct. These recordings were crucial to the investigation as they offered undeniable proof of Father Paulo's actions and were key to understanding the full scope of his crimes. With this new evidence, the investigation team had the critical information needed to build a strong case against Father Paulo. The videos and financial records were used to construct a detailed account of his wrongdoing, which included both financial theft and personal abuse. This evidence was vital for moving forward with legal action and bringing Father Paulo to justice. The investigation marked a significant shift in the case. What began as a series of vague rumors and financial anomalies had now evolved into a comprehensive case with solid evidence of serious criminal behavior. The authorities could now proceed with the necessary legal steps to hold Father Paulo accountable for his actions and provide justice for the victims who had suffered in silence for too long. On August 18, 2024, law enforcement officers executed a search warrant at Father Paulo's residence. The operation was meticulously planned to ensure that there would be no opportunity for Father Paulo to evade capture or destroy any incriminating evidence. Police arrived early in the morning to catch him off guard and to maximize their chances of a smooth operation. When the officers entered the house, they were methodical in their search. Their efforts were soon rewarded with a significant find. The police uncovered dozens of video recordings hidden in various locations throughout the home. These videos showed Father Paolo engaging in the abuse that had been reported. The recordings were explicit and detailed, providing clear evidence of his criminal activities. In addition to the videos, investigators found numerous financial documents. These documents revealed a troubling pattern of financial misconduct. Large amounts of money that had been intended for church projects were missing, and the records showed how these funds had been funneled into private accounts. This financial evidence further implicated Father Paolo in a scheme of embezzlement and misuse of his position. The search also yielded other items that supported the case against Father Paolo. Personal notes, communications, and additional documents helped to paint a comprehensive picture of his misconduct and abuse. All these pieces of evidence connected Father Paolo to a series of crimes that spanned over several years. That morning, Father Paolo was taken into custody. The arrest was a dramatic and highly visible event. The news spread quickly throughout Kauai, and many residents flocked to the scene. People watched in disbelief as Father Paolo, who had once been a trusted and revered figure in their community, was led away in handcuffs. The sight of him in police custody was a shocking and emotional moment for the townspeople. For the community of Kauai, this arrest was a devastating blow. Father Paolo had been a central figure in their lives, performing weddings, baptisms, and offering comfort during times of grief. His role in their lives had been deeply intertwined with their faith and trust. The realization that this man was now implicated in serious criminal behavior left many feeling betrayed and disillusioned. The arrest of Father Paolo forced the community to confront the painful truth about someone they had once held in the highest regard. The shock of his arrest and the evidence of his wrongdoing left the townspeople grappling with their sense of trust and their understanding of who Father Paolo really was. The emotional impact was profound, as the people of Kauai came to terms with the betrayal and the true extent of his actions. Following Father Paolo's arrest, the victims of his abuse began to come forward, driven by a mix of relief and desperation. For years, they had suffered in silence, unable to voice their pain or seek justice due to their fear of the priest's powerful position in the community. With the arrest and mounting evidence, they finally felt a sense of empowerment and found the courage to share their experiences. Each victim's story was harrowing. They recounted how Father Paolo had used his role as a trusted spiritual leader to gain their trust. He often approached them under the guise of offering support or guidance, which made his actions even more disturbing. He used his authority to create an environment where his victims felt safe enough to open up to him, only to exploit that trust in deeply harmful ways. Some victims described how they were manipulated into believing that the abuse was a part of their spiritual journey. Father Paolo had convinced them that what was happening was normal or even beneficial, wrapped in the guise of religious teachings. This manipulation made them feel confused and guilty, making it harder for them to recognize the abuse as something wrong. Others faced threats and intimidation. Father Paolo used his influence to control and coerce them. He threatened to ruin their reputations, hurt their families, or even excommunicate them from the church if they ever revealed what was happening. This fear kept many victims silent for years, as they were trapped between their fear of retaliation and their lack of understanding that what they were experiencing was abuse. The psychological impact on the victims was profound. Many experienced severe trauma, leading to long-lasting emotional and mental health issues. They suffered from anxiety, depression, and a deep sense of betrayal. The healing process would be long and challenging, requiring professional support and time to rebuild their lives. As more victims came forward, the full extent of Father Paolo's crimes was revealed. It became clear that the abuse was not an isolated problem but part of a systematic pattern of exploitation. The stories from numerous individuals painted a disturbing picture of ongoing abuse that had affected a large number of people over many years. The community, which had once been blind to the extent of the abuse, now faced the stark reality of the situation. The trust and admiration they had for Father Paolo were shattered as they confronted the depth of his betrayal. The process of coming to terms with the truth was painful and disorienting for the town, which had to reconcile their perception of a revered figure with the painful reality of his actions. The trial of Father Paulo Araujo da Silva was a landmark event in Kauai, drawing significant attention from the community and the media. The courtroom was charged with tension as everyone awaited the outcome. The prosecution laid out a comprehensive case against Father Paulo, presenting a range of evidence that left little doubt about his guilt. The prosecution's case was built on several key pieces of evidence. They showed the jury disturbing video recordings, over 260 in total, that documented the abuse Father Paulo had inflicted on his parishioners. These videos provided clear, direct evidence of his wrongdoing and were a central part of the prosecution's argument. In addition to the videos, the prosecution presented financial records that revealed a pattern of theft and embezzlement. These documents showed that large sums of money meant for church projects had been siphoned off into private accounts. The financial evidence underscored the extent of Father Paulo's exploitation of his position. Perhaps most compelling were the testimonies from the victims themselves. Many of them took the stand to share their harrowing experiences. For them, the trial was not just a legal process but an emotional ordeal. They had to recount their painful stories and confront Father Paulo in a public setting, reliving their trauma in front of a packed courtroom. Their bravery in testifying was crucial. It provided a personal and emotional dimension to the case and ensured that their voices were heard. The trial's atmosphere was intense as the community watched closely. There was a collective sense of anticipation and concern as they waited for the verdict. The courtroom was filled with a mix of hope and anxiety, reflecting the deep impact the case had on everyone involved. When the verdict was finally announced, it was clear and decisive. Father Paulo was found guilty on all counts of abuse and exploitation. The severity of his crimes was reflected in the harshness of his sentence. The court's decision was a significant moment for the victims and the community, symbolizing that justice had been served. For the victims, the verdict brought a sense of relief and vindication. It was a confirmation that their suffering had not been in vain and that Father Paulo was being held accountable for his actions. For the community, the guilty verdict was a crucial step toward healing and coming to terms with the betrayal of trust that had occurred. The trial marked the end of a long, painful chapter and the beginning of a process of recovery for both the victims and the town of Kauai. After the trial of Father Paulo Araujo da Silva, the community of Kauai faced the daunting task of picking up the pieces and moving forward. The impact of the trial was profound, leaving a deep and painful mark on the town. The church, once a place of worship and communal support, now symbolized the betrayal and trauma inflicted by someone they had held in high regard. The shock and disbelief that followed the trial left many residents grappling with their emotions. Feelings of anger and betrayal were widespread as people tried to come to terms with the reality of the abuse that had taken place within their community. The sense of safety that the church had provided was replaced with a deep sense of loss and sorrow. To address the trauma and support those affected, various efforts were put in place. Counseling services were introduced to provide professional help to victims and their families. These services were essential in helping individuals process their experiences and begin to heal from the psychological scars left by Father Paulo's actions. Trained therapists and counselors offered a safe space for victims to express their feelings and work through their trauma. Support groups were also established to offer a sense of community and shared understanding. These groups allowed victims to connect with others who had similar experiences, providing mutual support and solidarity. Sharing their stories in a group setting helped many individuals feel less isolated and more empowered in their journey toward healing. The community of Kauai came together with a strong resolve to address the situation and rebuild trust. They held meetings and discussions to confront the issues that had been exposed by the case. Efforts were made to implement stricter safeguards and oversight within the church to prevent such abuses from occurring in the future. This included revising policies and procedures to ensure greater accountability and transparency. The case of Father Paulo Araujo da Silva served as a significant wake-up call, not only for Kauai but for the wider religious community. It underscored the urgent need for reform within religious institutions to protect vulnerable individuals and support victims of abuse. The town recognized the importance of believing and validating the experiences of survivors, and there was a strong push for systemic changes to address and prevent abuse. The road to recovery for Kawari was expected to be long and challenging. Rebuilding trust and restoring a sense of security would take time and effort. The community was committed to working through their pain and ensuring that such a betrayal would never happen again. Their focus was on creating a safer, more supportive environment for everyone, guided by the lessons learned from this difficult chapter in their history.